Hello and welcome back to our channel. In today's video, I will be sharing with you some valuable information about a branch of healthcare where more nurses are needed, or I would say if you're a nurse, you can look into if you're tired of working at the bedside or tired of whatever field you are in now as a nurse. Stay tuned. I would encourage you to watch this video to the end so you can benefit from all the information that I'll be sharing. So my name is Rita, and as you all know, I'm a registered nurse here in the US. I, not so long ago, probably a few years ago, did my master's as a nurse practitioner. So yes, I have both my nursing degree as well as my nurse practitioner degree. Yeah. About 8 years ago, I decided to venture into a branch of healthcare that is called the clinical research or clinical trials arena or field. If at this point in your career you are tired, like I was when I decided to quit, this may be a field that you may want to look into and see if it works for you or if it suits you, to be able to give you some new perspective of what your nursing degree can let you do, and also experience what a different branch of healthcare feels like other than what you have been doing so far. I joined the clinical research arena in August 2015 after working a year and 2 months at the bedside here in the US. In my previous video, I shared with you that I didn't have any experience as a bedside nurse before coming to the US, so it was a little bit challenging for me when I started my first job as a bedside nurse here in the US. So most people will ask, what is clinical trials? What is clinical research? You might have probably even heard of it, but haven't looked into it. But if you haven't even heard of it, then I'm glad you are watching this video today. And if you have read about it, but not really sure if this is for you, I'm happy you are also watching this video, because my main aim is to give you some information that I believe will help you make an informed decision after watching. So clinical trials or clinical research is a branch of healthcare science where we deal with testing the safety and effectiveness of new medicines, vaccines, new medical devices, and even helping to test medications that have already been approved but can be used for another indication. So for example, in my current job, we work mostly on helping develop vaccines. So for example, the COVID-19 virus that hit us a few years ago, before the vaccine could come out on the market and be available to everybody to be able to get it, it had to go through clinical trials or clinical research. So we had to enroll people into these studies. That these people are called volunteers. So they volunteered themselves to come into these trials so that we could test the safety and effectiveness of these vaccines before it can come out into the market for everybody to be able to have access to. So the FDA is usually involved in this process of testing new drugs and new devices before it can come onto the market. We also, for example, deal with medications such as high blood pressure medications or diabetes medications, some which may have already been approved for use in a different disease. But then scientists realize, oh, it looks like this medication that has already been used for this disease can now be used for another disease. And like back home in Ghana, you sit in class and you hear about this one drug that is like a magic drug that you can take and it will cure all your diseases. But of course, these medications haven't been tried and tested through clinical trials, but people still take them. But yeah, here we test the medications and have the data to prove that they do what we think they are supposed to do. So if you haven't if you didn't know much about clinical trials, I hope this little detail that I have given you helps you to understand what clinical trials is all about. Somebody will ask, how do I fit in as a nurse? Okay, so as a nurse, you have the training that is vital to be able to take care of patients. We do not usually in clinical trials do direct bedside care, but we have some drugs that can only be tested in patients who are in the hospital setting, especially like when people are in the ICU, and there's this drug that, based on whatever reason they're in the ICU, it's being tested. Doctors think this is a drug that we can try on this patient that is having this condition at this time and it's in the ICU. So we have nurses who still work in the hospital and at the bedside, but what they are doing is that they are in clinical trials. So ideally, they are not having to work with 6 patients in a shift and take care of them and then go home. What they are doing is they are going in, seeing these patients, gathering the information that is required by the protocol that they are working on. So let's say if it's a hypertension study where they are testing this new drug, what this nurse at the bedside is doing is they'll go in, they do the vital signs, they draw blood, they administer the medication, and probably that's all they do. Everything else is behind the computer. They have to go back, enter the data, spin the blood, aliquot. Like, there's just so much that, based on the training that you have, you can transfer these skills into clinical trials. And that's why nurses are really needed in the clinical trials area, which unfortunately most people are not aware of. And I would also say it's not only nurses that are being needed. Almost everybody can venture into clinical trials. People with a bachelor's degree in chemistry, in biology, in psychology, in almost anything. Data analysts, all these people are needed because there are so many branches within healthcare that it's not only nurses who do it. So people in the IT field are needed, doctors are needed, nurse practitioners are needed, almost everybody. So yeah, if you haven't yet thought about it, I hope you would think about it, read more into it, and see if it's something that is worth trying. So what I really like about clinical trials or clinical research is the flexibility in work hours. So most times clinical trial jobs are more of like an 8 to 5, 9 to 5 kind of job with some flexibility based on the studies that your clinic is running or the hospital is running. You can go to work maybe at 7 a.m. and decide to close early at 3:30, or you can be the one that says, I don't come in today until 10 because I don't have a patient coming in, and so I'm going to do some of my work from home and then come in, see this 1 or 2 patients, and then go back home. So there's this flexibility that comes with clinical trials. Of course, there are some clinics where the load is heavier because, for example, in vaccine studies, the number of patients that we have to enroll are high. So you have to start at 8 and don't go home until 5. But other than that, there are no weekends hours most times, and there are no holidays times where you have to work. Christmas, everything else, you have your days off. Yeah, you basically work 8 to 5. One other thing is more about the pay. So for me, when I decided to switch and go into clinical trials, I would honestly say it was a pay cut for me. At that time, that was 8 years ago, but I didn't know much. I had only been at the bedside for a year, so I didn't know how to negotiate my salary and stuff like that. So I interviewed for this job. I was offered the salary, and it was mostly it was more of a base pay like what I was receiving at the bedside. But with the bedside, we all know you can pick extra hours and make extra money. You get bonuses or overtime pay and stuff like that. In clinical trials, most times your income is salaried. So if you're getting $5,000 every month, it's going to be $5,000, even if this month you worked a few hours extra than you usually do. Same way, in some months you can work less and still get your $5,000. But at the bedside, if you were to work 70 hours one week, you know you're making extra money. So that was the difference for me. But other than that, I would say my base pay was the same as the bedside, just that I didn't get anything extra for all the extra hours that I sometimes did. But it was good for me because I had my peace of mind, I had my sanity. I was not stressed because I wasn't working at 90 any longer. And patients were not insulting me. My staff were not, like, everybody was great at the clinical trials area that I was working as my first research nurse job. So I did enjoy it, and I don't regret switching into that field. So yeah, but once you come in as a nurse, you are able to negotiate your salary. You already have the experience, you have the skills that they are needing, so you can equally get what you are getting at the bedside. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult if you are making too much at the bedside. You may not be able to get that in clinical trials if you are coming in without the research experience. So they may start you off a little bit lower than you are expecting, but as you build the experience, then you can change jobs or request for a pay raise or something like that, and most times you can get it. So I would say pay wise, it's not much different, just that expect that your pay may be a little bit lower than you're making at the bedside, but in a few years you can catch back on all the money that you might have lost by switching to the research job. I would encourage you to do your own research as well. Go online, Google about clinical research, clinical trials, and do your own research before you decide to switch jobs. But if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. I would encourage you to use the comment section, get interactive with me, or send us an email, and I would be happy to respond to you. If you are tired of your bedside job or whatever you are doing, like I said, this is a field that you can look into. It may work for you, it may not work for you, but it did work for me, and I'm happy I am doing clinical trials.